Where are you? Are you at home?
Veronica, you don't know how right you were. I've gotten much, much worse. Please come to see me. Please come now.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where this week we are continuing our exploration of David Cronenberg's The Fly. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California.
And we are just a couple of days away from Halloween, so this year our timing has worked out perfectly, I think.
Yes, it has. And what a great film for us to finish talking about to get us going into Halloween for sure. Do you have any plans? Do you have Halloween plans? Like what's your situation on Halloween?
Well, my situation is entirely kid dependent, and this year my son has been obsessed with the Joker. And so we have put more effort into creating a Joker costume for him than we ever have. Because you know, those parents that are like sewing and putting together the most elaborate, amazing. That's not me. I've never been. I mean,
that's not where your skills lean towards.
No.
And I think that's understandable.
And so year after year, Jackson has had these ambitious ideas for costumes. And I'm like, dude, I can't pull that off. That's not, it's going to be bad. I can't really help you. And this year there has been money spent. There has been time spent. He has now dyed his hair green. Like have, I mean, like this is, like I'll send you a picture of,
all right.
But no, the Joker costume is for real.
Wait, dyed his hair green. Do you mean it is currently green right now? And he's been
his hair is currently green. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that is the current plans. Do you have plans for Halloween?
Do we have plans? No, not really. Like every year we have sat outside and handed candy out. And this year we're just not in the mood. Not because we don't, care about the neighborhood or don't want to be, doing that. It's more a matter of like, we've done it every year. We just kind of want to chill out this year. So we might go see a movie and grab dinner and kind of be away from the house because we also don't want to be rude by sitting there in the dark on purpose, and having people ring on the doorbell. But it's such a lot of effort for us as childless couple in the neighborhood with a lot of children. It just in the times past, it's been fun to sit out there, but honestly, it's like 4 or 5 hours in the cold out on the front lawn with the stuff. Now we may do like a bowl and take one or take two. But I don't know how people are about that because everyone is so paranoid. Not everyone. There's a lot of people that are super paranoid about stuff nowadays. And so you just never know what's the right step. So we just figured, well, we just won't do anything for 1 year. And there are plenty of houses in the neighborhood that don't do anything. We just haven't been that house, but we're doing that this year. And we'll just probably go grab some dinner somewhere and then go see a movie and then head back home. So that's pretty much the plans. Yeah.
The house that I currently live in, we bought in 1996.
Yes.
I believe in that time there have been 4 trick-or-treaters that have actually come to my house.
Well, to be fair, having been to your house, it is a walk up that hill, and there's not much past your house except a scary area there, and so it's no surprise that people haven't made the effort to go up that hill. It's exhausting.
But that is enough of our Halloween plans. I hope everybody's excited to hear all of that. Shall we get back into The Fly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here's what's crazy about this movie to me as I've been thinking about it is that horror movies, I think today particularly, like you're going to have jump scares.
Right.
You're going to have from the beginning.
Yeah.
This movie, we're now halfway through the film. Yeah. Nothing has been particularly scary, although there has been a lot of dread.
Yeah.
And I feel like to some degree, we are entering into the superhero portion of this movie. Because this sequence, he gets super, like it is totally a superhero origin story. He's now half man, half fly, and he's going to get superpowers.
Or a supervillain origin story, depending on 100%. How you look at him in perspective,
Where we left off, he had just woken up in the middle of the night and caught a fly in his hand and then released it. That is the first sign of the coming changes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit later. She wakes up, and I just wrote down this note of, 80s movie nudity. It's like a law. If it was an R-rated film in the 80s, there was going to be female nudity.
Yeah, of course. But this was already a sexy movie, right, Steve? I mean, she pulled down the stocking and they, got busy pretty quickly in the relationship of their situation. So, yeah.
And I think from now on in the movie, every time we see him again, we're going to be nervous.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And she sees him standing there looking huge and muscular, and he sits down, and then he lifts himself up in the chair by the arms.
Yeah.
And we're suddenly going, what is this? And then if that wasn't enough, he extends his legs out, and then he pushes himself right up into a handstand. So
yeah, super scary.
Some of this is Jeff Goldblum, the pushing himself up in the chair. That's Jeff Goldblum. By the time we get to the handstand, we're with professional gymnasts.
Yeah.
Who are 5'8", so significantly shorter.
Wow, interesting.
And do you remember how in our last episode on The Natural, I was obligated to say that they said that Robert Redford was a really good baseball player who was really hitting the ball out of the park?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't think that I was going to have to make that statement, but now I do because according to David Cronenberg, the professional gymnasts were very, very impressed with all the things that Jeff Goldblum could do.
Of course.
So once again, this will continue in all movies where any actor has to do a thing. Oh, he's really good at that.
I love the PR team of actors. They're naturally amazing at everything they do.
Such a great singer, such a great chef, such a great athlete. It's all, and then it just gets completely ridiculous. He jumps off, he sees this bar and he starts doing high bar tricks and does a perfect flipping dismount. I mean, wow, pretty amazing.
But you notice the performance here, and this is important to note, I think, because a lot of people felt like Jeff Goldblum, and we should talk about this at some point when we get deeper into this second half of our conversation about his performance in this movie, because a lot of people felt that he was, including Gene Siskel, that he was criminally overlooked for a nomination. And there's things he's doing here that I think when you're watching as an actor, watching another actor go through a performance like this, he is kind of lost in a trance while also enjoying it. So there's a split in his face between the feeling like what is happening to my body and then enjoying what's happening to his body and pushing the limits. Like, as a scientist, what can I actually do? And so he's not rushing to these things. There's not a big old giddiness to it. It's more a matter of fact is this is all coming to him as it's happening. It's all coming to him like, okay, what can I do next? Oh, let's try this. And by the way, another thing that's great about 80s, it's amazing how many gymnastics things there were available in people's factories, people's houses, people's apartments. It's amazing. Like in Footloose and here, it's amazing how people can have these gymnastic situations with these random pipes all through their houses and places of business, shall we say. So I found that to be fascinating. I love him walking on the ceiling and stuff. Like there's just a real interest in what he's doing. And I just love it as a physical and as an emotional journey that he's experiencing in these moments of this scene.
First of all, your point just about his performance is a great one, and one I'm really glad you brought up because, like, think of the distance this character goes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he goes from odd, quirky, nerdy scientist through, you know, super ego, almost superhero, through scary, aggressive guy, into frail, almost dying, frightened guy, to celebrating, crawling on the ceiling guy, to full monster, scary guy, who's still sympathetic. You know, like that. You're right. This is definitely a performance should be recognized. It also just occurred to me as you were talking about all the gymnastics equipment we apparently have sitting around. Isn't it? It's in Lost World where there's like the niece or the daughter who's doing gymnastics that comes back, and Jeff Goldblum's in that scene.
Yes, he is.
Think.
Great point.
That's really funny.
Right.
He finishes his gymnastics dismount, walks towards him. If anything, he looks even huger than he did before.
Yes.
And she's just watching him kind of smiling. And I'm like, no, you should be going, what the fuck is happening here?
She's super turned on. So, because the way he walks towards her, like he is the cock of the walk, so to speak, and her with non-verbally, you can see the taste. She's tasting him before they're about to have sex again. She is so completely turned on by him. And Geena Davis does a wonderful job with that. And the way she just kind of touches him and like this kind of desire, you can tell, which I think is good to throw that in because sometimes we do get stereotype with the nerdy stuff and it's all brains. There is human beings, nerds are human beings, and they get physically attracted to people and sexually turned on as well. And so I like that this was an element here in their relationship that was so potent. It was, it was electric. You could feel it after he was done doing his gymnastics.
New line of t-shirts that say nerds get horny too.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Nerds fuck too. NFT. Come on. Hey, a new NFT. There we go.
There you go. We're out on the street. He's wearing that leather jacket that she bought for him.
Yeah.
And this is like he's buying her a necklace, and we don't hear what they're saying. It's sweet and it's romantic. And I think Howard Shore does a perfect job of having music that is sweet and romantic and just that little bit of a creepy undertone.
This is very similar to what we see in Eternal Sunshine when Joel and Clementine are walking through this little market type of area, except of course that has a little more of a angstiness to them, but this one is a little more of a love that's building even stronger, and then of course we get to the sugar moment.
Eternal Sunshine, by the way, is one of the many movies that I had bought the Blu-ray because we were going to do it, and then that's like 2 years ago, and we still haven't done it. It's sitting here. I'm ready.
We still haven't done Eternal? Well, at this point, there's a 4K, so it's been time. We need to jump on it for sure. 2025, I think that makes sense.
I think we're going to do it.
Yep.
And now we're sitting, having some coffee, and he starts by spooning some sugar into his latte, and then just goes off.
I'm beginning to think that the sheer process of being taken apart atom by atom and put back together again, why, it's like coffee being put through a filter. It's somehow a purifying process. It's purified me. It's cleansed me. And I'll tell you, I think it's going to allow me to realize the personal potential I've been neglecting all these years.
The idea behind this was fly DNA is acting like an amphetamine.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And as he's talking about how he's being purified, he just keeps spooning more sugar into his coffee.
Do you normally take coffee with your sugar?
And then he just goes full manic.
Yeah.
And he's talking about his future and he's talking about his life's work. And that's where the script ended. And then Jeff Goldblum went up to Cronenberg and said, hey, can I keep going? And so we get, this is all pure Goldblum.
And not to wax messianic, but it may be true that the synchronicity of those two events might blur the resultant individual effect of either individually. But it is nevertheless also certainly true, I will say now, however subjectively, that human teleportation, molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging. It makes a man a king. From the moment I walked out of the pod, I felt like $1 million. I think I am going to have cannoli after all. Waiter!
That is quite a little rant.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you've, obviously now you've had any experience with Goldblum, this is literally how he talks. But I think I agree with you that he probably wrote this out, studied it, memorized it, which is why he went to Cronenberg and was like, hey, can I go forward with this? Can I play with this a little bit? And I think it actually works because we are impressed, right? Most of us are not science nerds. So the way he's breaking this thing with joy, and by the way, yes, there's hints of dread in the music at moments, but he is so happy and exuberant, and this is such a different Seth than we've seen before. So his excitement excites us. Even though he's putting that sugar in there, we're kind of laughing at how much of sugar he's putting in, and then her calling it out about it. And then this starts to spin, and this is where we get our first hint of danger, right?
Yep, because he decides he wants a cannoli. And he calls for the waiter, and you can see Geena Davis starting to go from this was cute and amusing to this is stressing me out.
What have I really done now? All I've done is say to the world, let's go, move, catch me if you can. Waiter, Jesus Christ.
And he's angry, and it suddenly has gone scary.
Yeah, yeah, just perfect. Just the perfect time to make it happen. Just as we're feeling excited for him, the movie turns. It's great.
So one of the metaphors that Cronenberg was really thinking about was what it's like to live with an addict.
Oh, that's great.
And I don't know. And there's also like an element of this that feels manic, like it's someone who's bipolar. Like, I don't know if you've ever dealt with someone who is on an upswing in this way.
Yeah.
Where they're positive and excited.
Yeah.
And so it seems good, but you're like, something's wrong. Like, this is too much. I have definitely been in the room with this kind of person, and it is weird and upsetting and scary.
I have to say, I've never experienced it personally. I've watched it in movies and TV shows, read about it, seen the documentaries on things like this. I don't want to say too much out of turn. I mean, I think my brother is a genius, but he has that not necessarily bipolar thing, but he has a thing where he shuts down or only communicates on his terms and then can get randomly super excited or angry about something. But it's been so long since I've experienced that on a day-to-day basis that I couldn't possibly speculate that that's what it was, but that's my feeling. I know for me personally, before I got the diagnosis of the mental health issues I was having, I didn't understand why I would have these periods of utter euphoria and followed by utter melancholy. Like, I didn't understand what those were, the swings. Like, to me, that felt normal because that's how it always been in my life, right? So there were times where I was so happy and I would say, like, don't be so happy. Things are going to fall apart. Things are going to fall apart. Level out, level out. Or when I was feeling super depressed, I would be like, okay, listening to very sad music, going, okay, I like this joy. I like what I'm feeling, the negativity. I like the melancholy, but I know I've got to find my way back to the middle. So there was always a sense of understanding what was happening. But I don't know that I've ever experienced with a partner or anyone I was with addiction. I mean, I may have been with people who have those kinds of things in their bodies, but I wasn't with them long enough to fully experience it in a relationship. Even my ex, which was a pretty terrible relationship, I think that was a lot of issues with her upbringing and things like that. So I wouldn't diagnose her in that way personally. But what has been your experience with it? Have you had this many times?
Well, I won't go into the details about who this was, but there was definitely a person who, it was so weird because they were being creative, they were being positive, they were super excited, and it was out of balance, and it was like, you don't want to say, and it's such a weird position where you're like, you don't want to say to someone who's really positive, hey dude, you should be more negative.
Yeah,
like that's a weird
yeah.
but it was just as, and then this was a person who was bipolar, and so like then it would, seeing the other side where it's like, no, now they're like, everything is actually okay in their world and they are so, can't get out of the bed kind of level of depressed.
Oh yeah.
And so like, yeah, I've been around someone who was dealing with some of these issues and trying, and it was interesting watching later on with this particular person, them going, oh, I could feel a manic phase coming on, because they knew, like, because at a certain point, the signposts, like, oh, I'm starting to feel like this. And where most people like, hey, I'm starting to feel really good, go, that's awesome.
Yeah.
For this person, it was, now I have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, when I was going through things, they wanted to give me medication. The doctor initially with 2016 with the mental health and all that severe depression. But I wanted to figure it out mentally. Like, I wanted to tackle it. I wanted to defeat it. I wanted to control it. And so you're right. Like, when I start to spin too high now, like over the last few years, I catch myself and I just go, okay, we're here. We're in this place. Let's ride. Let's keep it chill. We're not going to go too far. We're not going to get too crazy. And the same thing when I get too low. It's like, okay, we're in this place. We're okay. We're going to walk through this. It's not easy. But so I understand why people use medication, and I respect that for people who have much more severe cases. I just didn't want to be one of those people. So I thought I think I can just monitor it. And for the most part, it has worked. And I'm one of the lucky ones because I know other people use that medication and they depend on it. And it works. It works for a lot of people. It hurts a lot of people as well, depending on their body chemistry. So, it's all person to person based, so to speak.
One of the things that they wanted to change from the original Fly movie is that when the Fly movie, it's really structured, is really weird. It starts with the killing of the fly and then goes back in time. Yeah, it opens with the wife has smashed his head on like a mechanical press at a factory. And then we go back to try to figure out how you got there.
Yeah.
But what they didn't have is like, it's a normal person and then he has a head of a fly and a hand of a fly and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing good about becoming the Fly in the original movie, and that they wanted to change. They wanted it to seem really good at first. So we've got the physical ability, his mood is elevated, and what do we cut to next? Yeah. Apparently, he can have endless amounts of sex.
Yes. Yeah.
And she's wiped out. Done.
Hey, what's this?
It's an attempt to distract me, that's what it is.
It's like hairs or something.
And he kind of tries to play it off as just a thing that happens when you get older. But we as the audience, we know we came to see The Fly.
Yeah.
So we know these are the first transitions to fly hairs, you know?
Yeah, and I also think his face is changing too. You starting
Absolutely.
to notice more of kind of like acne type look on his face. So you sense that there's a decay happening here. From the skin, from the inner part of his skin, inner part of his flesh, I guess, out to the skin area. So things are changing, and
Yep.
we're noticing that because he was very fresh faced in the coffee shop. Now he's starting to decay a little.
And he goes to the kitchen and grabs himself some ice cream. And while he's doing that, she grabs a big scissors and is going to cut one of those hairs off of his back. And just that extreme close-up of the scissors makes me very uncomfortable, you know? And she cuts through it, and I almost feel like he gives a reaction like he feels it,
Oh,
you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
I want you to go through. I want to teleport you as soon as possible, right now.
It comes to him like an idea as he's eating the ice cream. Like before he even takes a bite of the ice cream, he bangs the table. He's like, "You got to go through."
I hardly need to sleep anymore, and I feel wonderful. It's like a drug, but a perfectly pure and benign drug. The power I feel surging inside me.
It's so clear that his scientific brain that allowed him to get to this place is no longer operating the way that it should.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I want to be able to wear you out. We'll be the perfect couple, the dynamic duo. Come on, right now.
Oh, hey, wait.
Yeah, he wants to put her through the teleport.
And that is terrifying.
Yeah. He's caught up in this. As you said, his scientific brain isn't working. This has not been going on long enough for him to want to put someone else through it, you know? And so what's the obsession with trying to make her go through it and create this dynamic duo? He's too manic. He's erratic and his thoughts are coming too fast. Yeah.
Don't give me that born-again teleportation rap. I told you I'm scared to do it. What do I have to say? I'm not going to do it.
And that's when he gets really scary.
Yeah.
You're a fucking drag, you know that?
Something went wrong, Seth. When you went through, something went wrong.
And he just thinks she's afraid and can't see the miracle that's happened to him.
You know what's fascinating when you watch it now? You know, we're in an age. Look, first, this works on multiple levels. As you said, it could be addiction, could be bipolar. Certainly, we're more aware of those things going on and with the people we love and we care about and our friends and what have you in our society. But also, I mean, he, in essence, has found a new state of existence in his mind, right? So in the age now that we're in, where people latch on to conspiracy theories and latch on to beliefs about one thing or another, they're constantly trying to get their loved ones to believe as they believe. You have to go through now. You have to go through this thing with me so we can come out the other side. We'll be together. And when you don't want to do it, they get mad at you. They get upset or they yell at you or they kick you out of their lives. And you can now, in 1986, I wouldn't have thought this way, but certainly now, seeing how some of these thought processes have consumed people, friends, loved ones, what have you, or people in our political sphere or in our business sphere, you can see how this could even be transposed onto a situation like that, you know, because he's so adamant and he unleashes on her, immediately insults her and debases her, right? And she responds with trying to speak from a place of care because initially she's shocked about his reaction, but then she realizes as a scientist herself, like something is wrong here. So she's trying to get him to come back to center, to look at it with his scientific brain, but he's not having it.
You're too chicken shit to be a member of the Dynamic Duo Club? Okay, then great. I'll find somebody else. Somebody who can keep up with me.
Which is exactly what he's going to do. And so he starts getting dressed and heading towards the door. And she's arguing with him, trying to get him to slow down. And I love the way Seth expresses this.
Seth, you have to listen to me.
You're afraid to dive into the plasma pool, aren't you? You're afraid to be destroyed and recreated, aren't you?
And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I'd be scared of that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because, you know, it's kind of what you just said, but like, I realized like I've had this conversation with people who wanted me to do drugs. I've had this conversation with people who wanted me to do like jump out of an airplane. Like you got to do it. It'll totally change your life. Going to Burning Man, like a whole bunch of experiences. Yeah. Some of them I've done. Some of them I have not done. But definitely there are people when they have the life-changing experience, they're like, you got to do this thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And like I said, nowadays is you got to watch this video. You got to listen to this person speak. And, it's very cult-like in that approach. It'll change your life. It's that kind of thing.
I bet you think that you woke me up about the flesh, don't you? But you only know society's straight line about the flesh.
I like that they took this theme that was what helped him make the scientific breakthrough, which is there's something magical about flesh.
Yeah.
And now he, whose flesh has been invaded by this other life form and is becoming a different life form, has this new experience of what all that means.
Yeah, and he's also, again, insulting her by saying, oh, you opened this door, but I'm the one that's actually walking through it. He's trying to take credit from her in a way because he's willing to go even farther than she was, even though he's going farther in the wrong direction.
It's weird to me how he talks about penetration in the next section because I can't help hearing him talk about penetration in Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just a strange usage of the word, and it's here too.
I'm not just talking about sex and penetration. I'm talking about penetration beyond the veil of the flesh. A deep, penetrating dive into the plasma pool.
I'm just like, dude, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah.
And he runs out. She just sits there completely stunned. Yeah. And I love the choice as he's going down the hallway to jump up and hit the light on his way out, just in this sort of physical celebration sense.
Such a man thing to do, to try to jump as high as possible.
And he's walking down on the street, very determined. The music is very dark and very heavy. And Mel Brooks is, as we know, Mel Brooks, the producer who didn't want his name on any of all this stuff, he's in the scoring session and he goes to Cronenberg and goes, is this music maybe a little too much? I mean, the guy's just walking down the street. And Cronenberg says, no, it needs to be this big because this guy is striding towards his destiny.
Yeah.
And Mel Brooks takes that in for a moment and goes, okay, then.
Now, Mel, get out. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so amazing. Mel Brooks, as a producer of this film, of Elephant Man, and like, the guy is a genius. And actually, I'm sure he was a big help on this movie, as I'm sure he was on Elephant Man.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. I think you're 100% right. And it's kind of a shame because our society now is much more open to comedians doing dramatic stuff and creating dramatic stuff and shooting dramatic stuff. I think if Mel had come was still somewhat in his prime, of course he's still alive, but if he was somewhat in his prime, it would be fascinating to see him do a dramatic movie, like direct a dramatic movie. Doesn't have to be in it, but certainly direct it. And people would have a whole new level of appreciation for his stuff because there's still a lot of people in the world of film who don't know that he's produced these dramatic, fantastic films.
I'll say it again. That autobiography of his is awesome. And John, you should listen to it. It'll change your life. Literally will change your life forever.
Will I penetrate into
the world of Mel Brooks?
Into the plasma pool? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what
you will? You definitely will. So Seth walks into this sort of divey bar. He walks past these two arm wrestles, who we will return to in a moment, sits up to the bar where there is a beautiful woman sitting there named Tawny.
Yeah, this is Canadian actress Joy Bouchel. Didn't really do much. Certainly worked in the 80s, but you might have seen her in Quest for Fire, and she's got a small part in Look Who's Talking. Still alive. Just randomly found her on Facebook doing research for the show. But her last credit is 1990. So I'm not sure if she's found another job or working, in the theater or whatever. But certainly she was part of the Friday 13th series as well. And those are pretty much and Pick Up Summer. She had a small part in that as well. So those are pretty much her credits. But she is she's outstanding in this limited role here.
I
in
agree.
This movie, right? She's striking. And she definitely looks like someone you'd see in a bar in a likeness,
Here's a change in the way that I view things today. If I had seen 30 years ago that there was this actor who had some success and then stopped, my response would be, "Oh, they failed. Oh, that's too bad they failed."
Right.
And today my response is, "Oh, they won. They got out." Like, you know what I mean? Like, thank God they're probably much happier now that they're not doing this terrible job.
Maybe.
Who's winning?
I hope it's Marky.
How come?
Because I like Marky tonight.
Well, I like you tonight.
Yeah, I like that way that goes down. Like, so he's basically hunting, right? And like even the way he walks into the bar, it is slow. He stops. before. So we notice, which would normally be like a cheap trick by Cronenberg to have us notice the arm wrestlers because he stops right in front of them. But he immediately stops because he sees Tawny. And so he has found his prey. And he comes closer to her. He's shoving down his chocolate bar or whatever he's eating. And he's essentially like flirting with her and trying to see where she's at. And now we really see his face getting those kind of spots on it that he's starting to decay, you know?
I got $100 says I can beat either one.
Take a hike, asshole.
John, who is this arm wrestling guy he's about to wrestle with?
So this is George Chuvalo. For those of you who may not know, George Chuvalo, also Canadian, not necessarily actor, though he did have some credits. He's more known for being Canada's greatest heavyweight boxer. He fought 6 world heavyweight champions in his time as a boxer, including Floyd Patterson, Ernie Terrell, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Jimmy Ellis, and George Foreman. In 93 professional fights, he was never knocked down or knocked out. The guy you're looking at here in the red and black flannel shirt. He was beaten by Muhammad Ali in 15 rounds in 66. He went 73-18-2 with 64 wins by knockout, and he beat people like Jerry Quarry, who you may know if you know the history of boxing, Cleveland Williams, and Buster Mathis, and he won the Canadian heavyweight boxing title 5 times. So this is a formidable dude, even though clearly he's put some weight on since his boxing days, but he's a formidable dude, and you would not think this guy is a heavyweight boxer by his look. He looks way more like a character actor. But other than Norm Macdonald's dirty work, there wasn't much else that he did that was of note as an actor.
I mean, this guy, but he is a storied guy. Like of all the, so. like never went down. And like you think about, okay, Muhammad Ali, not the hardest hitter in the world, certainly. Yeah. The guy didn't get knocked down by George Foreman.
That's amazing.
That's amazing, this guy.
And Ernie Terrell, who Ali said delivered an even harder punch than George Foreman.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So he goes up to arm wrestle them. And this, I think, again, we're in the tropes of the superhero movie on some level.
Yeah.
Like, this seems fun. We go into he's got new powers and he's going to go use them to impress the girl. Like, this is all tropes that we sort of dealt with before. It's going to go in a way that isn't fun at all in a moment.
But we think he's the bad guy. Like, this guy's the bad guy, right? He's the way he comes up to Jeff Goldblum, the way he hits his shoulder and everything, the way he laughs at him. So you're right. The tropes are here that this is the hero against the bad guy to prove what he can do with his powers.
I mean, this is Peter Parker and Flash. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, here's the nerd that's always gets picked on by the big tough guy, and now he's going to pick on the big tough guy.
Yeah.
But the first moment where things go a little bit weird is he puts out his 100 and says,
"And I get to take the lady home for the night if I win."
You're like, what?
Oh, the idiots.
Do I look like a hooker to you?
Hey, Tony, it's an easy 100. Come on, pal, let's get it over with.
So we're already in a bit of a strange place.
Yeah.
We start the arm wrestling, and suddenly Mark, this big, huge, strong guy, is struggling a bit.
Yeah.
And then we see, as he's squeezing his hand, this weird ooze come out of his hand.
Yeah.
You're like, what's that? And then he just goes for the win and shatters the dude's arm in a compound fracture, and the bone pops out, and it is nasty.
It is brutal. Yeah. I mean, he cheated. I would argue that he cheated, but you also look at his face during this thing. Pimples are now popping up.
Yep.
So it is by the second that his body is starting to deteriorate or change, shall we say. But yeah, when he secretes that stuff and then the snap happens, his forearm bone snapping there, it is brutal. And the scream that George lets us. So shout out to George. That scream was like horrifying. And Tawny is so shocked that she just goes along with him right out the door.
So the way they did this gag is they had to do a cast of George Chuvalo's arm, and Cronenberg, to do this, because that's obviously not really his arm that gets broken. And Cronenberg looks at the cast and he was like, his forearm is as big as my thigh.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a big, strong guy. Yeah, and as you said, he just grabs Tawny and they're walking down the street. She does not seem nearly as freaked out as she should be at this moment.
Let's be honest. People who hang out in these bars late at night, they've seen some shit. So it's not it's not a surprise that she's not 100% like overwhelmed or terrified of the situation. I'm sure she's been with weirder guys or stranger guys or more possibly scarier guys.
Are you a bodybuilder or something?
Yeah, I build bodies. I take them apart and I put them back together again.
I think in Jeff Goldblum's performance, there is a little bit of the human Seth is freaked out about what just happened.
Yeah, great point. Yes.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Not enough that he's going to stop.
Right.
But enough that he's like, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, where it's sort of like you're suddenly in a situation going, wait, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like, this is not a safe place to be.
And how the hell am I getting out of here?
Yeah. And then we get back to his loft. He's walking up the stairs and trying to push her, and she's upset that there's no elevator, so he picks her up and runs up many flights of stairs, which they were very impressed that Jeff Goldblum actually did this a bunch.
Yeah, it's not a stunt, because we see him literally pick her up and carry her. So, yeah.
And then we cut to her. She's sitting in the red chair. Again, this is that 80s nudity. She's kind of partially dressed in her denim jacket and panties, and we see a flash and hear it and realize, oh, he's teleporting in front of her.
Yeah.
Are you some sort of magician?
And as we see them start to make love, we see, in addition to Jeff Goldblum's ass, we see there are even more hairs growing on his back.
Yeah. This is a very sexy scene, by the way. I mean, her moving her leg over like that, and the way she like looks at him when he comes out, she's impressed and turned on at the same time, right? But also, what struck me watching it this time around, Steve, is the way he comes out of that telepod is very similar to what is Da Vinci's painting of man, the naked painting?
The Vitruvian Man?
Yeah, the Vitruvian. That's what he looks like to me when he comes out. If he wasn't becoming a fly, this would be the ultimate in terms of the physicality of man and the power and the strength of man, devoid of any limits or vulnerability. So it's a very powerful thing. And the way Cronenberg has the camera just below the couch or love seat that she's sitting in so that he looks even bigger with the smoke coming out behind him. It is very much. So that's why she says the magician thing, because that's the closest thing in her mind that she could make a connection to. But it's fascinating for us to witness him in all his grandiose glory. But as you said, we highlight the hairs, and then the next shot is him in a completely different physical position. He's like kind of huddled up into his body. So no more is it the Vitruvian Man. This is now a man who is starting to break from the inside out.
Well, and that's what we see in the next shot, because he is sitting up in bed, and every time we see him, and this is why the makeup in this movie is so impressive, because every time we see him, as you say, it's a little bit different. It looks a little bit different. He's not looking good sitting up in bed. And she asks if we're going to breakfast. And he goes, it's your turn.
Yeah.
That line that he had before, I'm going to go find somebody who will do it if you won't do it. I think that sort of fell out of my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was involved in the arm wrestling and the sex and all this stuff that's happening. And now it's just, oh, shit. Yeah. And there's no way that she could stop him.
It's your turn.
To do what?
I want you to go through.
No, I don't want to try that.
Why not? It'll make you feel sexy.
But I already feel sexy.
You can watch, I think her performance is great because you can watch I'm at some strange man's house.
Yes.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
He is sexy. He's acting really strange, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate my way through this.
Yeah. Like I said, she's probably been with the, crazier guys or whatever. Because I mean, she's in that place in her life where this is what she's picking up, so to speak. Yep. And so she is trying to navigate, but he's not doing a great job of pitching it. As I said, the way he's sitting with his arm covering his stomach, his other finger like scratching his eyebrow, he is very much like not pitching this as an awesome thing to do by saying you have to go through. He looks like he is struggling with all the changes that are happening to his body. So I think he grabs her and wants her to go through it because maybe in some messed up way, he wants someone else to be experiencing what he's experiencing so they can maybe have a commonality of experience and conversation. Or he wants to find out if something went wrong for himself by sending someone else through to see what happens to them. So it's an interesting place to be in. It's not just a selfish thing of like wanting someone else to go through because he wants to have a partner. I think there's a scientific part of his brain that's working now that is that is not that is a bit unhinged because it's not
Unhinged,
thinking
yeah.
clearly in what he's asking someone to do.
That's it. You're going to like it.
I don't want to. I'm afraid.
Don't be afraid.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I'm telling you this. I've said that line since 1986 about 7 million times. Be afraid, be very afraid. I've either thought it or said it out loud in situations. So there are certain lines that stick with you. That one has always stuck with me.
They didn't know that this was going to be the poster line, the trailer line.
yeah.
It was only in post that they went, oh, wait, no, that's good. You know, that's a good line.
Yeah.
Who's this?
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I live with my mother, too. Mom, meet Tawny.
And Tawny's goes.
Yeah. She's like, okay. All right, you clown. I got to go.
Now, if Ronnie hadn't shown up in that moment, would Tawny have gone through the pod?
I think he would have beat her until she went through the pod. Yeah.
That's what I think, too.
100%,
I think he would have forced her into it.
100%, which is horrible to think about for sure.
Here's another question.
Yeah.
If he had put her in the pod and there was no fly, does the telepod work perfectly?
Oh, probably. Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
I think
right. He could have proved. I'd never thought of it this way. If she hadn't shown up, she could have sent Tawny. He could have sent Tawny through, and Tawny would have essence been.
She would be exactly the same.
Yes,
you know?
but I mean, she would have a whole nother life, being essentially the first person to have ever gone through this as an experiment. So she'd probably end up being his assistant as he does these shows, almost like a scientific carnival barker, taking this equipment to show people what can be done. So yeah, it could have been a whole other existence if Ronnie hadn't shown up. But then again, he was going to become the Fly, so that wouldn't have happened anyway. But yeah, I mean, she would have been the first one to go through without any problems. Yeah,
I really think that one of the real tragedies of this movie is, in addition to the death of Seth and all sorts of other horribleness that happens, this was amazing technology that worked.
Yes, right.
Like he actually did invent the most amazing thing in the world, and it's going to get destroyed, and no one ever gets to use it because of what happened.
Well, until the sequel, but yeah,
until the sequel.
Why'd you scare her off? Jealous?
You're changing, Seth. Everything about you is changing. You look bad. You smell bad.
And he looks terrible at this point.
He does. Yeah.
And then we hear that she took the weird hairs to a lab and they had trouble identifying them because they weren't human.
Very good.
Not human, Seth. In fact, very likely insect hairs.
And he wigs out.
You're jealous! I've become free. I've been released, and you can't stand it. You'll do anything to bring me down. Look at me. Does this look sick? Does this look like a sick man to you?
And he punches holes through a wooden beam.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
It is.
Right? What would normally look like, that's amazing, looks terrifying in this moment, you know?
I mean, angry guys with superpowers. It's real scary.
But again, I go back to the idea of conspiracy theories and how this is the construct I'm using in my head. And you can use whatever construct for people who are listening to us, or Steve, of course, yourself. But that's how I'm looking at it now because of the current state my mind is in. And watching someone be like, just saying this stuff. You're jealous. I figured it out. Why can't you see it? Why look at me. Yep. Look what I can do. Meanwhile, the person you care about is looking at you and saying to you, you are changing. You are not the person you were before. You're scarier. There's something wrong here. And instead of listening to the one you love, you're caught up in your own stuff and you're saying to them that they're the problem and not you. So it's a really interesting moment to see now in 2024 versus 86,
I had never connected this to conspiracy theories. And when we first started saying it, I was like, well, I don't really see it. And then I went, oh shit, no, you're totally right. That is what it is. It is that weird, like what's really hard, I think, it's hard with, as we said, bipolar, mental health issues, drug addiction, and it's also hard with conspiracy theories, is that the train of logic that got you to where you got to makes perfect sense for where you are.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't see the fact that I'm on drugs, and at this point I took a wrong turn, and everything after that made sense, but I don't see the wrong turn. Right. And you don't see the piece of evidence in your conspiracy theory that just makes it not make sense.
Right.
Because you can't see that. You see all the logical train of evidence that makes your conspiracy theory absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Or you willfully overlook it because to look at that detail means to deconstruct your entire current reality.
Right.
And not a lot of people have the strength to do that.
And he just starts dragging her out of the room because he doesn't want to face it.
Wheels off! I don't need you anymore.
No, wait. Seth, please. Wait. Seth.
Don't come back!
And we just watch her walk down the hall sobbing, not knowing what to do.
Yeah. And because she loves him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, how many people on the other side of these situations, get so emotional because you feel so helpless that this person you loved has either gone into this place or gone into this mental state and you can't do anything. It feels like you can't do anything about it. And you're just caught in your feelings of how you're losing someone you love who is still alive, not dead. You're losing someone you love who's still alive. And that is such a difficult thing to conceive of and consume.
Well, and the reality is I think we could say with addiction, mental health issues, and with conspiracy theory issues, often there's not that much you can do.
Yeah.
In the end, they're going to have to save themselves.
Yep. 100% the truth. 100% the truth.
Seth has gone into the bathroom and he's looking in the mirror. And I think this is the first time that he sees it.
Yes. Right.
He wasn't seeing it before, and he sees that his face looks messed up. He grabs his electric razor, tries to shave. It's obvious that it hurts him.
Yeah.
He throws the razor into, across the room, and then he bites on his nail, and his nail comes off in his mouth.
Yeah.
And this is so visceral to me. Like, this is what the word visceral was invented for. Like, I feel it deep in my gut watching these things happen. I am not into body horror kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
No, it's not my thing. And so, like, watching this is just like,
yeah. I'm not big into medical procedures, but I do like body horror stuff. Can't explain it. But the way he shatters that razor, man, it is scary. Like, there's just, it literally just explodes in the bathtub, man. Yeah.
He squeezes his finger and it shoots goo out. And then he's wiping down the mirror, notices his other finger, sees the nail, and pulls it off.
Yeah.
And the sound design is great, too, on all of these things. Everything has the perfect amount of fleshy, squishy, wet, tearing stuff,
What's happening to me? Am I dying? Is this how it starts? Am I dying?
At the time, people saw this as 1986.
Yeah.
When the film came out as a metaphor for AIDS.
Yeah. Which Cronenberg has spoken about and said, I had none of that in my head, but I also can appreciate and respect people's points of views on that if they see it through that prism. And that's completely understandable for people who were experiencing people going through this, right? And it's talking about the body aspect of it all, not the freaking out and yelling or whatever. It's more a matter of what's happening to the body. And so, that's painful.
And it makes, because what he was thinking about was certainly he saw it as someone who is facing death. He saw it as cancer, as people dealing with someone who's dying. Like, he definitely saw that.
Yeah.
Seth goes over to his computer and he wants to go over what happened with that first teleportation. And by the way, one of the things that Cronenberg does that's very smart is to use voice activation and talking to the computer and typing into the computer. And he uses each one when they're the most useful, in terms of filmically.
It's a great point, Steve. He's not showing off. It makes sense to do it in that way
right
at that time. Yeah, that's a great point.
And what we see is that there was a second teleportation element, and we see that its size is super, super small. And by the way, when he's typing in the computer, he's now wearing gardening gloves because his hands are so messed up, which is also cheaper makeup-wise. Because you don't have to make up the hand. It's much easier to just put some gloves on. He runs a sequence of the DNA of whatever the other thing was that was in the telepod. And we have these images of the DNA helix and then a hair, and then it pulls back. And of course, we know the whole time what we're going to see.
Yeah.
But it's still dramatic when it finally pulls back and we see a complete image of a fly.
And the way they take you to it, this is so cool too. They take their time getting you here. You're seeing the sections of the fly slowly but surely, and then boom, the fly. And then you cut to Goldblum's face in his eyes, specifically as he's conceiving of what has happened, or starting to conceive of what has happened here. And the music hits perfectly, Steve. Howard Shore's music is so good in these moments.
It's so interesting because, and this, it's just, we've talked about this before, but like people have this idea that we don't want to know what's going to happen in a movie because that will ruin the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, you came to see a movie called The Fly. That's a remake of a movie called The Fly, where a guy teleports and gets turned into a fly. We know what the movie is. Like, there's nothing in this moment that is a reveal of the unexpected.
Yeah.
It is all a reveal of the expected.
Yep.
And that is why we're here. We are here for this moment, knowing that it's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
And he asks some more questions, and what we find out is that there was a fusion of the DNA of the fly and of Brundle on the molecular level.
The big question he asks is, did Brundle assimilate the fly? So he's still trying to save himself.
Yeah.
Because he's saying, well, did I consume the fly? And if I've consumed the fly, that means maybe I can control this or I can stop this. But the computer says, no, that's not what happened. And
I'm
that's
pretty sure if you consume a fly, you have to consume a spider next to eat the fly. And then you have to eat a cat. You swallow a cat to get the spider and then a dog to get the cat. I'm pretty sure that's how that's supposed to go.
they're eating the cats and the dogs. Yeah, exactly. But this where they say here that he has been assimilated on a molecular level, now he gets it.
Yep.
Now he understands. And the look on Seth Brundle's face is one of utter horror within the movie.
Ronnie is at her apartment. I love the old portable word processor she's typing into. You know, it's like pre-laptop.
I would love one of these.
It's also always funny that, you know, in this age where people smoked, you know, people just don't regularly smoke in movies like they did. And this was just a normal thing. And the phone rings, and first she hears breathing, and she knows it's Seth.
For the last 4 weeks, I've been afraid to see you. Now, I'm afraid not to.
Where are you? Are you at home?
Veronica, you don't know how right you were. I've gotten much, much worse. Please come to see me. Please come now.
It's really scary and upsetting. You know what this movie really reminded me of is the short story. You know the short story Flowers for Algernon?
Yeah, they made it into a movie, right? Charlie,
Yeah,
the one with
Charlie with what's his name?
Cliff Robertson. Yeah,
yeah. So that story wrecked me when I was in like 8th grade, and it's the story of a guy who is mentally handicapped, and they do some surgery on him. He becomes super brilliant, and then he loses it and becomes dumb again, and it's just such a sad story. And this is that we have this is a guy who's super brilliant, but then he gets superpowers essentially, and then becomes weak, and it's slowly but surely destroying him, and he knows that's what's happening to him, you know. Again, every time we are going to see him again, it's always scary. Like, what are we going to find?
What's next?
She comes into the place, it's a complete mess. She calls his name, and we hear,
Stop.
Seth.
we see him from around the corner, and you can see from his face and his hair that he is really messed up, and he's walking with 2 canes, and it looks incredibly frail.
Yeah.
You were right. I'm diseased, and it might be contagious somehow. I wouldn't want to infect you.
I'm like, you haven't really taken a lot of precautions here, you know?
And it's been accelerating. It's unrelenting every day there. It changes. Every time I look in the mirror, someone different, someone hideous, repulsive.
The makeup, by the way, is incredible on his face.
Well, they won the Oscar for this.
Yeah, this is Chris Wallace, and he had done Gremlins. That was his big claim to fame before this.
Wow.
And right before the movie starts, he gets a call. They say, hey, we're starting on Gremlins 2. We need you on the movie. And so he had a choice between going on Gremlins 2, a sequel to the movie that really made his career, or going to do The Fly. And he went, I have to go do The Fly, which I think he made the right choice.
I agree.
I was not pure. The teleporter insisted on your purity. I was not pure.
And he hits himself. And really, you know, it's not physical purity that's the problem. It was mental purity, I think.
Yep.
Because he got in when he was drunk and he was angry and didn't take the right precautions.
Yep.
And what's interesting, I think, is that this person is much more like the Seth that we met before the thing than the crazy, scary guy that we met in the last sequence.
Right. He's been humbled by the physical changes. And so the humbling has allowed his mind now to come to the forefront because he can no longer rely on his strength and his sexual viability. It's his mind that must now be the most powerful weapon that he possesses in his body. And so, but I will ask you a question about this, man. What do you think about the fact that the whole apartment is full of trash? Is that a stereotype with the fly, or is this him just being super depressed so he doesn't want to clean up? Like, why is the place full of trash?
I hadn't thought about it until you asked that question, but to me, it's more the latter, I guess, of he's depressed, he's consuming a lot of sugar, and he doesn't clean up after himself. I was trying to think, like, since you asked the question of like, well, are flies messy creatures or not messy creatures? And I don't have any way of thinking about that question.
Well, I mean, flies are attracted to trash, but by the same token, how is he going to leave the place to throw out the trash, right? That just occurred to me now as we're talking about it. So he probably keeps it all around because he can't get rid of it, you know.
Well, and I go like, yes, flies are attracted to trash, but flies are attracted to food. It's not food, trash to them.
My teleporter turned into a jeans placer. A very good one. Now I'm not Seth Brundle anymore. I'm the offspring of Brundle and Housefly.
I think this is a remarkable thing that he has done with his brain of going, because I think he actually in his head has gone, I'm not that person anymore. That person no longer exists. This is a different human, a different person, not a human, you know?
Yeah.
And then she goes to touch him. Yeah. This is a moment in the movie theater at the first screening that they had no anticipation of, which is the audience went,
yeah, right, of course.
When she's going to touch him, both times in the scene where she touches him, they freaked out and they just didn't expect that could happen.
Yeah. But of course, when you're dealing with someone who is going through a physical disease, those are the things you have to do. Like the tenderness is important, and humans have a phenomenal capacity to care for what would normally on the outside look disgusting.
Yeah,
if it's someone you love, you know, you get over all of that to be near them.
Oh, I think it's showing itself as a bizarre form of cancer. In general cellular chaos and revolution, I'm just gonna disintegrate. In a novel way, no doubt. And then I'll die. And then it'll be over.
And there is definitely no question that part of him is looking forward to that. Yeah. You know what I mean? That this will be over.
There must be something we can do, you know, somebody we can go to, a test that can be done.
No! I won't be just another tumorous bore talking endlessly about his hair falling out in his lost lymph nodes.
This is a comment on death with dignity. You know, because this is dealing with that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I also go, this is as unscientific as Seth could ever be. Like, science should be looking at this. A scientist would go, no, I need to be examined. You know?
Well, I think there's an ego here, too. I am the scientist, not the specimen.
Right.
And
exactly.
There's an element of that for himself, too. Yeah.
Then he grabs some donuts, and as you do, he vomits on them before eating them. And I love that he had forgotten that this was gross. Like, this is not how humans do it. Because then he sees what he's just done and goes,
oh, that's disgusting.
Right.
And then if that wasn't disgusting enough, he reaches up to touch his ear, which falls off.
And Geena is doing incredible stuff.
Yeah.
She's not doing too much. She's not, like, everything is happening to her. So in a way, she's the avatar for the audience. But she is legitimately feeling this from a place of utter, you know, sadness and horror. And then she jumps in and hugs him with the missing ear on the side of the missing ear. And that tells you that she really loves him, man. She really loves him. And she's just heartbroken at what's happened to him.
Help me. Please help me.
This is why this is more than just a horror movie, more than just because you have so much feeling for this guy.
I think it was Siskel who called it the greatest love story of 1986.
Wow.
Of all the movies that came out in 1986, I think it was Siskel who said that, or maybe it was Time Magazine, but one of these really high-profile reviewers or high-profile magazines, as I was doing research for the film, said that this is the greatest love story of 1986. I was like, wow.
And then in what is definitely not the greatest love story in 1986, where do we end up but back with Stathis at Monolith Publishing? Because, and this is what's so crazy. So one of the things Cronenberg did when he rewrote the script was he cut out a whole bunch of characters. Is that, and so basically he set it up. So Stathis is the only other human she knows.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody else for her to go to for help. And it's so bizarre because where we last saw him, he was just such an incredible asshole.
Yeah.
You know, but that's where she goes.
Don't go back to him.
That's it? That's your advice?
He's right, don't you see? It could be contagious. It could turn into an epidemic.
I have to go back to him.
Which I'm totally on Team Stathis here. Like, this is a big deal. You need to do more stuff than this, you know?
Yeah.
If you saw him, Stathis, if you saw how scared and angry and desperate he is.
I'm sure Typhoid Mary was a very nice person, too, when you saw her socially.
Again, I'm Team Stathis on this one.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Do I have permission to claim your body when this is all over?
Yeah, Stathis is, his bedside manner is not so great.
It's horrible, yeah.
You say, if only I saw him. Show me. Tape him. Show me. Let me think about it.
I don't have much faith in Stathis coming up with something, but structurally what I really like is this is what she signed up for, was to write a book, to be a journalist. And he's essentially sending her back to be a journalist.
Yeah.
Again, every time she pulls up to the place, I'm scared because I don't know what she's going to find. She walks in. We're in a high angle looking down at her. She calls for Seth.
Seth?
No, up here.
Oh.
And where before Seth was on two canes and really, really frail, now he's crawling around on the ceiling like it's nothing.
Now he's fully like, you know, converting into the fly. And he said it took him a little bit of time to get used to it, but now he can do it like second nature.
Yeah. By the way, this is 2001: A Space Odyssey. This whole set is on a gimbal that can spin around, and that is how we're walking on the ceiling.
Nice.
He lifts. I love too that he lifts up his shirt and he goes,
Oh, look at this. What's this? I don't know. I seem to be stricken by a disease with a purpose, wouldn't you say?
is that he's changed from last time we saw him was please, please help me. I'm scared.
Yeah.
And here he's somehow found some kind of acceptance.
Yes.
And almost fun in what the hell is happening to me.
Right.
He makes it down to the floor and, you know, Ronnie is freaked out.
I know what the disease wants.
What does the disease want?
It wants to turn me into something else. That's not too terrible, is it? Most people would give anything to be turned into something else.
It's funny that his positivity is scary in its own way.
Right. Like you said earlier, Steve, this is what's scary when this is what can be uncomfortable when you're dealing with someone who has these swings. Like,
yeah.
I just left you and you were super depressed and frail and weak. And now you're bouncing off the walls, critically excited about what's next. And it's like, and you're asking us to ride these waves with you. And we're not in that space. And so it's a lot to ask. And so she says, I got to get out of here. I can't take this. Right. Like you said. So it's a lot, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because the real thing of dealing with someone who's bipolar is that both the manic phase and the depressed phase are part of the same disease.
Yeah.
Turned into what?
What do you think, a fly? Am I becoming a 185-pound fly? No, I'm becoming something that never existed before. I'm becoming Brundle Fly. Don't you think that's worth a Nobel Prize or two?
Yeah, right. It's super scary what's happening to him and the way he's like excited about it. And by the way, his hair is now almost all, you know, just stringy gone. The teeth have become jagged. He's having these little clicks, these little physical
twitches.
Yeah. These things that are happening here, but he's apparently okay with all of it. His eyes are moving, darting around like that. And yeah, so yeah.
And it's interesting too, like this idea where when the first baboon failure happened and she wanted him to talk to camera because these things have to be chronicled. Well, that's what he's going to say now.
Must chronicle the life and times of Brundlefly, don't you? At the very least, it should make a fabulous children's book.
He sits down and she has the camera on him and says,
How does Brundlefly eat? Well, he found out the hard and painful way that he's very much the way a fly eats. His teeth are now useless because although he can chew up solid food, he can't digest it. Solid food hurts. So, like a fly, Brundlefly breaks down solids with a corrosive enzyme, playfully called vomit drop.
And we cut from him recording this to Stathis watching.
Yeah.
And we get to watch Stathis's reaction as he vomits on his food and slurps it up.
Oh my God.
Here's the thing about this movie, and I think this is a perfect moment to say this. The way the camera moves, Cronenberg shot this movie like a TV movie. Let's be honest. He shot this very much in the style of a 1980s TV movie. But it works. Why? Because it adds to that feeling of like old school approach to as a remake of an old film. But also the actors here are so good that although Cronenberg is still kind of new in his career as a director, and these tactics that he's using are a little from the beginning of a director's career, they work for the film, and it makes the film quaint in an interesting way. And so just having the camera move around him as he's like, oh my God, oh God, it's very clear the style there is TV movie style, but his reaction is what you want. And that's why you cast really well. It's important to do that so you can see him consume it as we're consuming him consume what he's watching. And I think that's great.
Going back to your point about Goldblum's performance and why maybe he should have been nominated is like, I just going like, okay, every single stage, he's playing a different character and every one of them is interesting.
Yes.
Like there's the first nerdy science guy, interesting guy.
Yeah.
Right after the transformation and he's just sort of confident in discovering his powers, interesting guy.
Yeah.
Then we get into the really scary guy that goes out and grabs Tawny and is trying to force people in. That's an interesting guy. Then the frail, please help me, I'm scared guy.
Yeah.
And now we have the sort of quirky, funny, joking Brundlefly guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Every one of those is really interesting.
Yep.
What's weird, it took me a while to think about this, is like, why is Stathis at Ronnie's apartment when she is not there?
He kept the key.
Right. And then she comes in sobbing, immediately goes to the bathroom. He follows her and she says,
I'm pregnant.
And I love the way he plays this, because the first oh no is just, oh no, that's not, you didn't want to be pregnant, now you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And then you see him have the realization that it's Seth's, the fly's child.
Right.
And what that could mean.
Oh no.
I'm pregnant with Seth's baby.
What do you want to do?
I don't know.
Geena Davis, so this is where I really think you go, oh,
yeah,
this is a movie star. This person can act, you know?
Yeah.
We are outside a hospital. He pulls up in his Maserati. They're wheeling her quickly through the hospital. She says that she's scared, and we're going, oh my God, what's going on?
I don't think I want to lose it. Is there something wrong with me? Why am I losing it?
Better this way, Ronnie. You'll see.
Everything is moving very, very fast. And now we're suddenly in an operating room and they're surrounded by doctors. And we see Stathis is there holding her hand, and there standing between Geena Davis's legs is Dr. David Cronenberg.
Yeah, that's an odd decision, but okay.
Well, the reason it happened is Geena Davis was very uncomfortable with the scene. And she said, you know what would make me most comfortable is if it was you standing between my legs in this very difficult scene. And he went, okay, if that's what you want.
Wow.
And so we were performing what we think is an abortion, and it's weird. Everything about it is weird. Like, you're like, why is Stathis there? Why was this moving so fast? Why is there blood everywhere? Why is there so much tension? And then we hear,
Hold on a minute. There's more in there.
There's more?
Yeah, I mean, a lot more.
and the camera's kind of circling around, and they're asking her to push.
Yeah.
The music is getting more intense, and then we hear screaming, and then he pulls up a giant pulsing bug larva. And then she wakes up.
I wish there'd been cameras to catch stuff back in the 1980s, man, in theaters, right? Because, I mean, the reaction, I think I can remember that, like, everyone in the theater with me was like, oh my God, you know, it's like this fucking, oh no, this thing of what it could be, you know? And so when it's, and the way they have it moving around and stuff, you're like, oh my God, you know, it's great.
I think, to me, this is one of those things, for me personally, that works once and does not work again. Like, the first time I saw the movie, I am sure I went, wah!
Yeah.
But watching it now, it's just like, yeah, there's like a weird little mechanical puppet thing that he's holding.
Oh,
it just looks dumb to me because I know it's coming. But the first time, I'm sure it worked. And then we're back at the computer with Brundlefly.
Yeah.
We see him typing with now his merged fingers.
Yeah.
And he says, goal, to decrease to a minimum the percentage of fly in Brundle. And we could see his face has become much more fly-like. And the solution pops up, gene splice Brundlefly with a pure human. And I wrote in my notes here, I was like, well, that sounds evil.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happens is because we've established that he can talk to the computer, as he starts talking to the computer using his voice activation, and the computer no longer recognizes his voice.
Yeah.
He taps his teeth with a pencil and the teeth fall out. Oof. And he goes to the sink. By the way, at this point in the production, it's about 5 hours to do the fly makeup.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is, because that doesn't mean you don't have a full day of shooting.
Right.
So that means Jeff Goldblum's having, 17, 18-hour days.
Yes.
And he shows up super early before everyone else. Geena Davis would come with him and she would read to him while he was in the makeup chair.
Oh, wow.
Which is very sweet.
That's
and one of the books that she read to him was a little book called The Accidental Tourist.
Oh.
And they're talking about it and saying, God, this would make a great movie. And Geena Davis is angry that someone else is going to play this part because she thinks she'd be perfect for it.
Yeah. Well, she was
Isn't
right.
that crazy?
Yeah, she was right. She ended up winning an Oscar playing.
Yep. So he's in front of the mirror and he takes his teeth and he opens up the medicine cabinet and says,
You're a relic. Yes, you are. You can't deny it. Vestigial, archaeological, redundant.
And inside the medicine cabinet, we see his ear and we see some other parts, which I think we always speculated one of them was a penis.
That looks like his penis to me.
Yep. And these are just all, as he says,
Artifacts of a bygone era. Of historical interest only.
And then he closes the mirror, revealing his face.
And we see the hairs have gotten longer on his back, too.
Yep.
So that's and he's built almost these like mini forts in certain rooms.
And that's when Ronnie comes in.
You've missed some good moments. Is that why you're here, to catch up?
You could see her gathering herself because we realize, she's here to tell him that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know how to say it.
I wanted.
My teeth have begun to fall out. The medicine cabinet's now the Brundle Museum of Natural History. You want to see what else is in it?
And he's twitching and he just looks like a monster at this point,
Yeah.
I came to tell you. I wanted to see you before.
And then she starts crying. And he says,
You have to leave now. And never come back here. Have you ever heard of insect politics?
And we're going like, where is this going? I don't understand what he's about to say.
Neither have I. They're very brutal. No compassion. No compromise.
And now we're starting to get what he's driving at.
Yeah.
And you could see he's physically reacting to things that he's feeling, Like, I think there's a voice in his head now that is telling him to do things, and another voice that is desperately trying to stop that voice.
Yeah.
And he knows that he's going to lose.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I'm saying I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man and loved it. But now the dream is over and the insect is awake.
That is a great line.
It is a great line.
That he dreamt he was a man. And I think it relates to that thing of, this is not Brundle. This is a new entity called Brundlefly.
Brundlefly, yeah,
exactly. Who dreamt that he was Seth.
Right.
But that's not true.
I wonder if there are people, as we've said, Steve, the construct for which to look at the movie, are there people who, when they realize they're like going into the place, they realize they're going into this place, but can't stop themselves? I wonder.
Yeah.
I don't know. As I said, I haven't had the experience that you or other people have had in terms of having this, in their lives. So I don't know if that's what happens, that these people have these lucid moments where they're very clear about what's happening to them and they can't control it,
I mean, this is why people saying to someone who's depressed, just cheer up.
Oh,
just
God.
it's
over
ridiculous
it.
because
get
they
over
don't understand that's not a thing we can control.
No, Seth.
I'm saying
virtue of this day.
Just really scary. And she runs out, sobbing, and who is waiting just outside of this car is Stathis.
Let's go. Let's do it now.
Now, wait. Wait a minute. What did he say?
I couldn't tell. Let's go, Dad.
No!
And now he's trying to get her to slow down.
Yeah.
No, I think we should wait for a few days. I don't think you're in the right state of
No,
mind.
now. I want it out of my body now. You should have seen him. There could be anything in here. In me, in my body.
I don't know if I can arrange it now, right now, tonight.
Again, the performance here is phenomenal, Steve. From what he says to her and her reaction to it all, and like she's really now grasping that she's lost him or is going to lose him. And the way her head is moving, the way she's reacting to it, and the way she kind of slinks out of there and then runs because enough is enough. She wants out of the situation. Right into Stathis's arms. And you know how bad it is? It's so bad that she would run into Stathis's arms. That's how bad the situation is. And so, again, for as great as Goldblum is, I think Geena is matching him beat for beat in terms of the emotional journey and destruction of this relationship,
Well, and it's such, I think structurally, this movie, there just isn't, even though you know that it's called The Fly, and the guy's going to turn into a fly. And we totally, like, I made the whole point a little while ago about how we're going to see a movie because of things that we expect that will happen, and we're happy when we see those things happen. I also think, structurally, there is no way to predict where this movie is going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, at this moment, it's like, oh, wait, now we're talking about an abortion? And, oh, my, what does that mean? And, like, oh, wow. And because she basically goes...
Do you understand me? I don't want it in my body.
And they head off.
Wait. We can't jump past this moment. I think it's important for us to break this thing down because this scene with Stathis, he stops her from getting in the car. He slams the car door shut when she wants to get in. And he says to her, no, you're not in the right frame of mind. You need to think a few days. And I've seen some analysis of the movie as this being abortion, like a commentary on abortion. And I don't know one way or another where the movie sits or if it is, but you can absolutely make the case because she's the one that's saying in this moment of emotion and passion and frustration and anger and pain and sadness, I want this out of me. I want it out of me. I can't take it anymore. I can't birth this thing. I can't be the mom to this thing. There's all this stuff going on for her. And then he's the one that slams the door shut, which is so weird that Stathis would be the one who, of course, was jealous of Seth, jealous of the situation, and has been kind of cruel to her. He's the one that says, no, you need to think this out. You need to take a few days before you make this decision. It's a big decision. He's trying to be the voice of reason for her, and she's the one that's like, no, I want it out of my body. I want it out of my body right now. And then they eventually leave. So I think it's important to highlight this because also Seth is listening. So now he knows, as we cut to next. But I think this is possibly a commentary kind of at a really lower surface about abortion here in this movie, or about being a new mom, the frustration and the fear of it all,
It is so weird, I think, and this is where I would love to hear Cronenberg talk about this today, is the choice to set up Stathis as such an asshole.
Yeah.
And then I agree with pretty much all of Stathis's things that he says from him saying it could be contagious. We need to go to the authorities. You need to be safe. And I agree with him here. Like, wait, you're in a really emotional state. Let's wait till tomorrow and just take him. He's not saying don't do it. He's saying just like this is not the moment to do it. But she forces the issue. They drive off. And as you said, we cut to Seth Brundlefly on the rooftop who has watched them. And I'm going, wait, did he hear all of that? What does he know? What does he not know? Oh no, this is terrible. Yeah. Cut to a doctor's office in the middle of the night. And this doctor, who obviously is a friend of Stathis or something, and Stathis is a powerful man, called him in the middle of the night. And he's going, what's going on here?
She's pregnant and she wants to have an abortion.
In the middle of the night?
Yeah, this is played by Leslie Carlson, who some of you may remember if you go all the way back to horror movies, to the original Black Christmas in 1974. He played the helpful Officer Graham. He was also the pushy Christmas tree salesman in The Christmas Story, which is the film we were going to be doing, Steve, in a Christmas Story, rather, not the. But he did 4 films with director David Cronenberg. He was in Videodrome as Convex. He was in The Dead Zone. I think he's one of the sheriffs or one of the head sheriff in The Dead Zone. Not Tom Skerritt, but the other one. He's in The Fly, as I said, and he's in this offbeat short that Cronenberg did called Camera. But he's also appeared in the X-Files and Highlander, in the Friday the 13th series, 21 Jump Street, the original series, the original MacGyver, and the Twilight Zone. So a guy who definitely had a niche in these horror science fiction type of projects, and certainly someone used by Cronenberg more than once in multiple films.
We have good reason to think that this child will be deformed.
And the whole time, Geena Davis is just looking out the window. She's like not engaged.
Yeah.
And the doctor is trying to figure this out.
Listen, I don't mean to interfere, but I detect a certain uncertainty here. You know, there are tests we can do to determine whether or not...
I don't want tests.
And she turns around super intense and says,
Tests can't guarantee anything. The baby could start off normal and then become... I want an abortion. I'll do it myself if I have to.
Again, let's take a moment here. 1986. Okay, this is not 2024. We're much more advanced in how we talk about abortion. Whether we're forwards or backwards is all speculative and perspective, or subjective rather. But certainly in 1986, to have her going to get an abortion in the middle of the night, this is a very controversial thing to put in a film. And her turning and saying, "I don't want tests." Now, we've heard about this. There are women who want to get and men too, like who parents who want to get the tests on their babies. And if they find out that their babies have, could be deformed or they might have a gene or whatever that could lead to them being mentally handicapped, some of these women want to abort the child. And so that's a conversation that's an element here. So for her to turn and say, tests can't guarantee anything, it could start out normal and then become something else. It's a very controversial thing to put in a movie in 1986. And I thought it was really gutsy of them to confront this and kind of talk about it within the construct of a film like this. And because the love story works so well, you understand her perspective. And obviously a fly, and we'd have no idea. But it's also, it runs as a little bit of a mini commentary on it throughout this section of the movie, the idea of abortion. So I think it's really powerful to have that in here.
I think, people always want to put a film into a specific genre as if everything fits neatly into one genre.
Yeah.
And so we go, this is a horror film. Well, this is also a science fiction film.
Right.
And what science fiction allows you to do is to address an issue from an angle that you would never have come at it before.
Yeah.
And so this is addressing the issue of abortion of like, well, what if it's a monster?
Yeah.
Right. Like what, is that, and that forces us to look at this thing.
Right.
So needless to say, she's very convincing, and we're in the operating room a little bit later, and he's, saying, okay, just put on this, gown, and they step outside, and she's left alone, and she's closes her eyes for a moment, and there are these big glass brick windows in the background, and I had forgotten it, so it totally shocked me when Brundlefly crashes through the glass bricks. It's crazy. Yeah. She's terrified. He picks her up, heads out. Stathis runs in, a moment later, just in time to see them go.
Yeah,
they're on a rooftop, and he lowers her down and says,
"Why did you want to kill Brendel? The baby might be all that's left of the real me."
And it's so sad, because I can totally feel for this creature at this point, and feel really sad for him and what he's going through, and 100% believe that this is her choice and she can abort the, possible monster that she's carrying in her womb,
Yeah. But this is a horror movie trope, isn't it? Like, she's in love with him.
Yeah.
So when he bashes through, she doesn't beat him off or scream or run behind stuff. She willingly lets herself get taken by him because she's in a state of confusion about the whole situation. And even the way this is shot when we finally get to them on the rooftop, again, Cronenberg uses this TV movie thing as Goldblum is saying his lines about Brundlefly and what's left of him as human. So I think the way this is done, again, is super interesting. And I don't know why you have Stathis cut his hand on the window. I don't know what the point of that was.
I don't either.
but it's an interesting moment, you know? So I like the way this all goes about, and the way he lowers her slowly as they come into frame and the camera is moving, I thought is really well done, because it shows there's still genuine affection. She still trusts him and loves him, and he's tenderly, trying to speak to her about this.
Well, this is you're totally right. It's King Kong and Fay Ray.
Yes.
It's the here is the monster, but the monster loves this woman, and the woman knows that the monster. But we don't know how much of Seth is still in there. In the last scene, he said, "I'll hurt you."
Yes.
Please don't kill me.
I can't have it. I'm afraid.
Please. Have the baby.
I can't. I can't.
Too bad.
Too bad.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I don't know if he's saying too bad like, oh, it's a shame, or he's saying too bad like, I'm going to have to kill you. I don't know how he says too bad. Like, you can read it any number of ways. You know.
Here's my interpretation.
Oh, yeah, please.
Which is, my interpretation is he has this information about you have to go through the telepod with another human.
Yeah.
And the fly part of his brain, or the part of his brain that's not in control, is going, okay, I have to grab a human and do that thing. Yeah. And another part of his brain says, that's murder. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And what he hung his hopes on when he found out that she was pregnant, some part of me is going to live on. So I won't have to do that horrible thing of going through the telepod and destroying another human life if she agrees to have this baby. And when she says, I can't have the baby, then that part of his brain that says, well, then I'm going to have to do the telepod thing. That's too bad. Yeah. I was going to control it, but now I can't.
Now I don't have. Yeah.
We're back at the loft and the door slides open, and it's not Brundle. It's not Ronnie. It is Stathis. Because now he's becoming the hero in some strange way.
Yeah.
And he walks in. And it's funny, and I wrote, it's funny, only now does this really feel like a horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, up till this point, it's been this character study and this love story, and then watching all the things that Seth is going through as his body is changing and feeling really sad about it. Now we have a character walking into a scary place with a monster, where there's monster, you know?
And he puts together his shotgun, right in the monster's lair, which is really interesting.
When I go to fight monsters, I assemble my weapons before going into their lair.
You would think. Yeah.
That seems like, but this is the choice and I really go like, how much of this is just budget? Like, we just didn't want to have more characters and we didn't want to have more locations. So scenes are either in Stathis's office, Ronnie's apartment, or this loft. And these are all the characters we have. And that's it. It
works. It works.
Yeah. So he puts his shotgun together. He looks at the computer and sees the thing about subject A and subject B and gene splicing and putting them together into telepod 3. And you can tell Stathis is a science guy. He gets what he's trying to do. Yeah. And just as he's looking at the other pod, we hear a scream and Seth drops down from him from above.
Now, I don't know if people catch this, but when he is reading the thing on the screen, the information on the screen, there are shadows moving behind him on the ceiling. So if you catch it, that builds up the dread, and whether conscious or subconscious, so that when he drops down, it's kind of a little hint that he's been up there watching him as he's reading this stuff. So when he jumps down, it's not so much of a surprise. If you don't catch it, then it is a surprise that still works, because Stathis hasn't seen this guy in his full transformation yet.
So in preparing for the show, the first time I watched the movie, I did not catch it. And the second time when I was going through my notes, I did. Yeah. And this is, we talked about this before, of like, there's some things as a filmmaker, you want 100% of your audience to see. They have to know this. They have to understand that.
Right.
And there are other things where for the more observant people will catch them. You were more observant on this. Or if we're watching it more than once, there's more details that you pick up. And this definitely falls into that category. If you don't see it, the movie's totally fine.
Yeah. 100%.
But if you do see it, it's fun.
Yeah.
So he knocks Stathis to the ground. Stathis tries to raise his gun to shoot him, but Seth just pushes the barrel away, lifts him up, and then vomits on his hand.
The casualness with which he pushes the shotgun away is the barrel of the shotgun away is amazing. Yeah. And then the strength and ferocity with which he picks up Stathis. And Stathis now is grasping, this is a monster. He is incredibly strong, and the look on his face of just utter fear of what's going to happen. And he keeps saying, "Let me go," and then he just vomits on his hand. I don't think anybody saw that happening or coming. And when it happened, it was so like, oh my God. And they did such a great job of planting that throughout the movie, And so the fact that his hand deteriorates and it's this stub of blood and he goes into shock, it is fantastic. And I love this moment every single time. Both of the moments, by the way, because we're about to get the other one too.
It's one of the most memorable moments of the film. I mean, there's no other movie has done this particular kind of horror, as this, except that when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is the exact same technology they used to melt the faces in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh,
which is that what you do is they built up a wax hand, and the wax hand has layers. So there's a skin layer, and inside there's blood layers and bone layers, and each of these waxes melt at different temperatures. And then it's just time-lapse photography, which is it might take an hour for this melting to happen, and they're taking one frame every little while as it slowly melts down, and that's how they did this gag. And you're right. I mean, Stathis' reaction to looking at his bloody stump is just horrible. And then he puts his foot on his gun trying to grab it, and Seth leans down and vomits on his ankle, which melts it. So nasty.
I love it. And the thing is, again, this is great. This is great storytelling, because you would think having your hand melted off your body, in essence, would stop you from doing anything. But Stathis, is that correct, Stathis?
Yeah.
He reaches instinctually for the shotgun with his foot, right? Because there's some element of him that's still working on some base level to try to survive, right? And I love how Brendel leans down and he's almost like, really? You're still trying? And he looks at him, and then he looks down, and then he just vomits on, and the melting of the ankle is just incredible. And then Stathis is just gone at this point. Like, it's shock beyond shock at this point. And he just kind of, his eyes flicker back into his head, and he's gone, man. It's great. I love it.
And by the way, the vomiter on the ankle, we are now into a Brundlefly puppet. So that is no longer a dude in a suit. That is, we've moved into the puppet realm.
Yeah.
And he's about to vomit right on Stathis' face.
Yeah.
No, don't, please.
Why do you think she doesn't stop him from vomiting on Stannis in both of those spots? Do you think he kind of deserves it? Do you think she thinks? Because she doesn't seem all that broken up.
I think she was still out on the roof.
Oh, okay.
I think he came in faster, because I think in the shot I could look at it, but I think she's kind of coming in when she's saying to stop.
Yeah, but she doesn't go like, we should call the cops, or we should call the police, or the ambulance for him, or anything. She's just caught up in all of this madness. So, I think there's a piece of it that's like, well, maybe he deserves it.
She's just a little bit pissed off about the way that he treated her.
Yeah, I don't think she 100% like loves him.
Help me to be human.
How?
And he jumps down with her and points to the pod and says,
We come apart, and then we come together there.
And we see that he's initiated the sequence, and we realize what he's about to do.
You, me, and the baby.
It's a really terrifying idea.
Yeah, because you're not going to get rid of the fly, are you?
No.
I don't think you're going to get rid of the fly. So it'll be all three of them combined together, which is mad.
Well, and what memories will we have? It's a complete, and just even this is all assuming that it would even work. I mean, they could just be a pile of mush like the baboon, Yeah. She is starting to struggle, and she reaches up to push his face away, and his jaw comes off in her hand and twitches on the floor, and then more pieces come off.
Yeah.
And it's just a complete transformation. By the way, this took forever to shoot. Super technical, all sorts of moving parts. This is puppeteers. This is multiple special effects. Yeah. And not only that, but everything is sticky and slimy. And so every time they have to redo something, they have to clean it up, get all the sticky gunk in the right. I mean, it's just gross and time consuming and difficult for this transformation. Stathis wakes up and is reaching for the gun.
Wait, Steve. I know you don't like the body horror, but there are some of us who do like the body horror.
Yes,
we got to go through this moment. I love that the finger or the whatever those things are that come out of his thumbs or come out of his hands, those little spike things or whatever they are. I'm not well versed on the fly anatomy, but this whole her ripping off his jaw is what triggers the entire thing to happen to his body. Right, this full transformation now. His skin starts to fall off his body. We see the fly parts now bursting out of the human flesh, the darker kind of parts that we would know. And then his head splits in half.
Yes.
And all the skin falls off. And so he is full on fly now. And in that ferocity, as you said there with Stathis getting his stuff, he throws with all the force he can. He throws Ronnie into the telepod, which is horrific what he's doing now, and because he's full on into this stuff,
The countdown is happening. Stathis is grabbing his gun. Now she looks out through the window and we see the full new creature for the first time. And this is a full puppet. They called this the space bug. It took, I'm not sure how many puppeteers it took to actually operate this thing. And then they had different rigs of the space bug for different positions and different actions, this is to say, we heard about this with Jurassic Park. We've heard about this with when we did the thing of like, you have to specifically figure out, I need this thing to walk here or pick this up lean down. And so that they build it to do those specific things.
Right.
The space bug goes into the other pod and the door closes and locks it. We're down to 35 seconds and Stathis has gotten up and with his one hand and the shotgun, he aims and shoots the cable going to Geena Davis's pod.
Yeah.
Which explodes. They did multiple takes on this. And when you do an explosion like this, you put a safety glass in front of the camera so that no debris flies up and A, damages your camera, or B, damages the camera operators that are standing behind it, Yeah. And so the first take, no problem, did the explosion. The explosion wasn't too big. Everything seemed safe. Did another take, no problem. They were like, oh, this is not a big deal. And then they decide to do a third take, but they move the camera closer and they don't have the safety glass because they're like, we've done this a bunch. This is all totally fine.
Right.
And unfortunately, on the last take, the guy who was the armorer decided to use up all his gunpowder. He's like, well, I got extra. And so he made a bigger explosion. So they make a bigger explosion, but they didn't tell the camera people who moved the camera slightly forward because they saw how small the explosion was. And this time when they do the explosion, that door blows off, slams into the lens of the camera, breaking the lens.
Wow.
Nobody was hurt. And that is the shot that's in the movie. And it looks fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the creature, busts the glass on the door, gets the door open. We're down at 10 seconds. Yeah. Stathis falls down. It's stepping out, and the teleportation happens with the space bug half in and half out of the pod. All sorts of error messages come up on the screen. Then we see a message that says fusion of Brundlefly and Telepod 1 successful.
Yeah.
And the door of that third pod opens and we hear a scream. And I'm thinking about that baboon and I'm thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong. And we see this weird, strange creature pop out of the third pod.
Yeah. And of course, by this time, Stathis has opened the pod and gotten Ronnie out, So, it is, as you said, it is super crazy that Stathis, as big of a prick as he was, is the person who kind of saves Ronnie from
absolutely
the horror of the fly. But yeah, when he pops out of this thing, and I love I love the way this is set up, right? Because we hear the roar, and he had been kind of roaring or screaming or whatever when he had become the fly fully now and throwing Ronnie into the telepod. But the way this is done with the, like, what do you call it? The smoke, the ice smoke, whatever that is, dry
ice. Yeah.
Yeah. The way it's done now, as you said, this is also a huge horror movie moment, right? And and you see now that it has become half teleport, or half pod, half human, or whatever. A third. Somebody say this: a third pod, a third human, a third fly. Basically, is what he's become, and he's crawling towards Ronnie, and we sympathize with him, right? Because it's supposed to be absolutely incredible pain this creature is in.
And she has the shotgun and has come close to him. And she's just like, I can't shoot it. Like, I can't do that. And then Brundlefly, whatever he is at this moment, grabs that shotgun barrel and aims it towards his own head.
Right. And she steps back. And the way he looks up, the way they design the eyes, it is an eyes of please. Do you know what I'm saying? The eyes are saying please. Oh man, it's amazing.
No, I can't. No, I can't.
And it nods its head, and she raises the gun and fires. And then drops to her knees with Stathis looking on, and we fade to black, and that is the end of The Fly.
Dude, what a great ending.
For years, so I watched this a bunch after it came out, hadn't seen it forever, and I had just put that trailer from The Fly 2 with the delivery as the end of this movie. I just, in my brain, like, John Carpenter would always have that tag at the end where there was some scare. I just had mentally assembled this, and it's not. That doesn't exist here.
No. It's a great ending. And the way they, it doesn't just go to black, it fades to black. And so we see the sparks still going, and we see the light and the smoke behind her as she's there on her knees on the ground crying because she's had to kill a man she loves, right in front of a dude she doesn't love, and it's so heartbreaking and powerful and sad. And the explosion is just the explosion of his head is complete. So he's dead, fully dead, but she's lost him, and it's so heartbreaking. And we at the end, and if you've been involved in the love story, we are devastated that she had to do this. It's so well acted by the puppet and by Geena Davis, of course.
It is a perfectly, truly tragic ending, I think. And I like that's it. Like we kill him. We don't have any wrap up. We don't see. It's just like that is the end of the film. They screened the movie for Barry Diller, head of the studio. Super, super nervous because it's a weird movie.
Yeah.
Barry Diller came up to David Cronenberg after and said that was a masterpiece.
Wow.
Yeah. The test screenings were crazy. So the editor is hiding in the alley outside the theater because he can't bear to watch it with an audience. I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
And there are people walking out. And a guy walks up to him and says, "Are you involved in this movie?" And he goes, "Maybe." And this guy says, "People shouldn't be allowed to make movies like that," and walks out.
What?
Well, and this is so one of the things about test screenings is frequently it'll be like you're at a theater and they'll say, "Hey, would you like to stay for an additional movie?"
Yeah.
But this is not a movie that's for everybody, know?
Yeah.
And so you stay for, like maybe you just watched like a re-release of Bambi and now you're at The Fly. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Plus, there was several things in this movie that got taken out after the test screenings.
Yeah.
One of them is we have this idea of fusing two different bodies in order to get him back to normal. So he goes, "Oh, well, let me fuse a cat and a monkey." So he fuses a cat and a monkey, which goes crazy.
Yeah.
And then he has to beat it to death with like a pipe or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is just too upsetting and monstrous. And it killed the sympathy for Seth.
Yeah. They make him an animal killer.
Yeah. And then there's another scene where an insect arm pops out of his side and Seth gnaws this insect arm off with his teeth.
Oh my God.
They cut that out.
Wow.
There was a final scene, a couple of different ending scenes to this movie. One of them is a final scene where she is lying in bed pregnant, alone. And she has had this dream about this baby that turns into a butterfly.
Yeah.
It's like a butterfly fetus. It was all stop motion. I've seen little clips of it. It sounds super, super surreal and bizarre.
Yeah.
So that's one version of it. The other version is she's not lying in bed alone when she has the dream about the butterfly fetus. She's lying in bed with Stathis because they are back together and he is wearing a prosthetic hand to replace his hand. And that is the idea that she's in bed with Stathis, that made sense. And by the way, Jeff Goldblum hated this ending.
Yeah.
And A, he was jealous of the actor anyway, but B, he's like, how could she possibly end up with this asshole? That is a terrible, terrible idea. And they took both of them out.
How could she go from one monster to another? Yeah.
The script, we talked about this before, it went into arbitration at the Writers Guild because they had to assign the credit. And David Cronenberg called up the Writers Guild and said, "No, you have to give Charles Edward Pogue shared writing credit with me, even though the script isn't very similar to his script. And he said, because if Charles Edward Pogue hadn't written his script, I couldn't have written the other script. And so he pushed to have his credits split with this other writer.
That's awesome.
I love that. Isn't it?
Awesome. Yeah.
And this is the movie that Pogue is most remembered for, so it worked out well for him too.
I bet.
The movie, the budget was somewhere between $9 and $15 million. It grossed $60 million, which is a huge hit.
Yeah.
And that is all the notes that I have on The Fly.
Yeah, it won the Oscar for Best Makeup. But let's. What are your thoughts on this, Steve? Let's talk about his performance. Like, do you think he should have been nominated for Best Actor? And I'm gonna bring up the Best Actor nominee.
Literally was doing the same thing.
Yeah. What? This is an interesting situation because, as I said, quite a few people felt like he should have been nominated at the time, but horror wasn't seen in the same. It's still not seen necessarily as. And sci-fi and horror really not seen in the same categories like drama or comedies or what have you. But here are the nominees for that year. I think I'm pretty correct. This is when Paul Newman won for Color of Money. Dexter Gordon for Round Midnight. Dexter Gordon is a jazz artist who is in this movie Round Midnight. Bob Hoskins for Mona Lisa. William Hurt for Children of a Lesser God, which honestly, of the 5, I would have given it to him for that movie, which I hope we do someday on the Cine-Files. And James Woods for Salvador, and so I mean, I would move Dexter Gordon out first, then maybe James Woods. Those would be the 2 I would move out in terms of the 5 to put Jeff Goldblum in if I was to put him in place of somemeone. So
I've never seen Round Midnight, so I don't have an opinion on it.
It's a fine film. It's
but honestly, I'd take Paul Newman out.
Really? What? You would take Paul Newman out for Color of Money? Wow,
absolutely. And I totally like Color of Money. We've talked about it before. I like it more than you do.
Yeah.
But I think Jeff Goldblum's I hadn't thought about it until you brought it up, but Jeff Goldblum's performance is great. And Paul Newman's performance is totally good and enjoyable in Color of Money.
Sure.
But having just talked about him in The Verdict, there's no comparison whatsoever. And so I'm kind of like, yes, I would totally have Jeff Goldblum be nominated instead of Paul Newman, and maybe what's his name? Dexter
Gordon. Yeah,
and maybe Dexter Gordon as well. So final thoughts, John. What are your final thoughts on The Fly?
I think this is still one of the greatest films ever made in terms of body horror, in terms of a love story, in terms of a sci-fi / horror approach to tell the story. I think it's the maybe top 5 greatest remakes ever, honestly. It's a film that still endures, still has an effect on you when you watch it today, especially if you watched it back then or if it gets its hooks in you. I think this is absolutely one of the ones that people need to go back to and refer. And in fact, when that fly landed on Mike Pence's head during the vice presidential debate 4 years ago, the internet flooded with memes of Jeff Goldblum saying insect politics in the movie. So it's still a film that resonates with a number of people, and it's because of this. It's because of the direction, the writing, and the performance is really number one for me. The performances that put it across the line and make it as memorable and classic as it is. It was the 10th best film according to Gene Siskel of 1986 for his list. Ebert had it in his top 20. That's amazing. Richard Corliss and Richard Schickel of Time magazine put it in their all-time 100 greatest movies ever. Greatest movies ever. And that's how Time later named it one of the 25 best horror films ever made. So it definitely has a massive appeal still and massive reverence and respect from a number of people. And as I said, Gene Siskel felt that Jeff Goldblum, quote, got stiffed out of a nomination because of the older Academy voters not liking the sci-fi horror type of genre. So it endures. The sequel, the less said about it, the better. Stathis does come back in the sequel. He has one scene. But I think this one endures as an incredible film, showing you a director on the rise in David Cronenberg and 2 actors in their prime in Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis. So, yeah.
So I will say I have some mixed feelings about The Fly because particularly the Stathis character, it just is so odd, those choices, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about them. And there's some things, as you said, that are a little bit like TV movie-ish about the way that it's filmed.
Sure.
But at the heart of it are these two characters who I love, and a story. It's actually the emotional story, not the horror parts of it, that are what I love the film for, which is that Geena Davis and Jeff Goldblum are so good, and they create characters that I like so much. And then watching Jeff Goldblum go through this horrible, horrible experience and watching her helplessness in trying to help him. It genuinely moves me. And so I think for those elements, this movie completely endures. So that's what we think of The Fly. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for The Cine-Files. It's Cine_Files on Twitter, The Cine-Files Podcast on Instagram. And if you want to support the show, you can do it at patreon.com/The Cine-Files or through Apple Podcasts, where you can hear our Cine-Files shorts, and you can also get ad-free versions of the show. You can buy or stream The Fly along with every other movie we've ever reviewed at cinephiles.net. And you can subscribe to the show at all the usual places like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you haven't already left us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please do so. They definitely help. And you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how about you?
Yeah, you can always reach me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Please feel free to recommend other body horror films to me, because I do love them, except for The Human Centipede. I am not doing those movies, for God's sake, so don't come near me with that stuff. But other stuff that I may not have seen, please recommend them to me. And if you want to see more of what I do as a critic and as a host of shows, you can head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, where you'll see my reactions, my reviews, our shows for the Geek Buddies, the Hot Mic, Spill the Tequila, and all the stuff, and Jedi Way, all the stuff we do over there on the Outlaw Nation. Thank you so much.
You should definitely check all of that out, and you should come back here next week, where we'll be doing another great film right here on the Cine-Files.